Hello and welcome back. We are here with Dr. Doug Hall and Judy Hall of the Emmanuel Gospel Center in Boston's South End. And we are talking about revival in Boston and the quiet revival in particular. Would you say that your own understanding of ministry and evangelism has evolved over the years? Has it become more complex? Has it become different than what you initially, you came to work with this very traditional mission in the city, and now the Emmanuel Gospel Center has all kinds of very advanced kinds of ministries, everything from a consultation service to institutions that helps them develop themselves, alliances with the Black Ministerial Alliance, surveys and all kinds of research being done on systems in the city, working with European missionaries that come for brief periods of time, work in India. It's a very creative thing. Tell me a little bit about that evolution. Was that something that was the product of a vision that was like previously conceived and then you kind of proceeded to implement it, or was something that you learned as you went?
It was make it up as you go along. Yeah, when we first came, like most people that want to do ministry, you see the things around to be done, and we try to do everything at once. So we started children's ministry, youth ministry, Bible studies for adults.
More the traditional kind of stuff.
Just doing everything. And of course there were many people with immense needs, like, you know, addicts and people that were struggling with life, substance abuse problems and stuff. So we started off just trying to do everything. So we took, you know, alcoholics into our home. We did everything at once. And then we learned one by one how you learn how to not be an enabler, how you set limits for people, how you set boundaries for yourself. We learned kind of everything as we were going along.
And I think that's one of the key elements of successful ministry, finding needs and being sensitive to those needs, being sensitive to the particular dynamics, whether they're cultural or spiritual, that affect those situations that you encounter, and then responding to them in an appropriate way. And I think the Emmanuel Gospel Center has distinguished itself really for that kind of sensitivity and for kind of reinventing itself in a way, because we do believe that this is all Holy Spirit led, but at the same time it's that flexibility of reading the city, reading the needs of the city, and how you can enrich the systems of the city, and then going ahead and designing ministries that respond to those needs. So.
Yeah, we will spend quite a bit of time before we start any ministry of understanding the context that we're working in. The reason we do that is because we believe it's very easy to be unintentionally counterproductive in the city, in almost anything. And and so we come to any ministry with the idea that we can be counterproductive. We live in a fallen world, and we're fallen people. Some things could make total sense to us and feel like we're totally sincere in doing it, but it could end up hurting people. And so we started with that idea that could happen. And what it does is it makes you notice the problems when they happen. If you don't think you can make problems, or your wonderful ministry can't produce any, you're not going to notice them when they happen as easily. But if you feel that you can do it, then you notice when they occur. And then you learn a lot by seeing what went wrong and why it went wrong, and what you have to do personally to change, and what you have to do with regard to understanding the people that you're working with more properly.
Well, I was going to say it requires a lot of humility, number one, to take that approach. You have to assume that you have to respect the people that you're seeking to assist and to minister to. They're not merely sort of recipients of your generosity, but they're human beings that require respect, that require an understanding of who they are, and they need to be asked certain things in order to be ministered to. Just like, you know, the ethnic groups in the city, you can't just come from the outside and sort of seek to impose your solution, because you'll be rejected, or simply you'll end up missing it and doing probably more harm.
I love the text where Jesus said to his disciples, "Greater things will you do than I have done." This statement was made by God to human beings, okay?
And of course, the charismatic world or certain sectors of the church would interpret that sort of in the sense of signs and wonders. How do you feel about that? Because, you know, by the way, I do see a difference. Some of the people that we have interviewed in the past who subscribe more to a charismatic Pentecostal point of view and of how to minister to the cities, how to minister to the culture, I would see a significant difference, although I see more complementarity than anything else. I don't see conflict necessarily or contradiction. But really, what you are proposing is it's a different kind of way of looking at how to address the needs of a culture, the needs of a city. It's not coming in with the Holy Spirit fire, for example, and kind of bringing in the big bazookas of the different gifts and kind of, you know, spraying the principalities and powers with gifts, but you're looking at something a little bit different and a little more quotidian at a more street level. Do you see a difference between those two approaches?
I think that, you know, if we minister in the way Jesus ministered, our desire should be to see the people we disciple do greater things than we do. That was his attitude, and how can we improve on that? And so the focus of ministry then is to you know, assist. I mean, nobody like caused the quiet revival. That's done by, you know, thousands and thousands of people and scores of different churches and so forth, working in an organic way, really.
And again, tell me what the quiet revival in 2 sentences, so that you can speak about it. What is the quiet revival? And when you refer to that, I know it's something that is very familiar to many of us, but people seeing us out there may not understand what the quiet revival is. It's a revival
that started somewhere in the mid-60s and it continues today, where there has been a consistent growth of churches every time we have analyzed
in the Boston area.
In the Boston area, every time we've looked at it, practically every, you know, almost every year, for 40 years, which is almost phenomenal, and that includes the growth despite all the churches that die, and there are a lot that die, but still the growth is over 50% in the initial periods. And the growth of Christianity in this highly secular city has just gone on consistently, continuously for 40 years.
Only in ethnic enclaves?
Oh, no,
or
everything.
Is it something beyond
no, it's happening
the
across the board, increasingly now. And there are more, you know, even Caucasian churches and so forth being established now. And in fact, some of them, a lot of the churches we're working with are being planted in Caucasian.
So go back a little bit. We were saying about the detecting needs, respecting the groups that you minister to, how different that may be to how some other groups may perceive revival and ministry and serving. And you were saying that there's a characteristic of
so some people would do a survey and say, okay, there's all these different people. There's, you know, 100 countries of the world represented. How do we reach them? We don't say that. We will say, how is God's Spirit already doing the job, and how can we work with that? And invariably we'll find, because what we're looking for is the Holy Spirit's presence in these communities. And once you see it and you try to nurture what's going on, and you don't try to contaminate it at all, but work with it. And you know, it's being sensitive not only to the people, but to the Spirit of God who's working and is doing his job in the city. And so, you know, our thing isn't how do you do the job, but how does the job actually get done? And it gets done by the people themselves with visions that are their visions, not yours. And then you're there to nurture the development of that kingdom.
And that is there's a huge difference in that approach, and I think it's good for the enrichment of our viewers to point out that I think in the charismatic Pentecostal world, by the way, which I identify with in many ways as well, the idea is, particularly in these days, for example, we have people coming from Florida, from Texas, from California to Boston. There is this sense that, you know, God is going to move in a very powerful way. There will be revival. There will be a great visitation of God in New England. And we must come here to stoke this fire. And we must come here to minister to people using sort of prefabricated, gifts and the resources that God has already for us, and here we are to kind of channel those in order to foster cultural transformation. I know I'm beginning a very potentially deep question that is complex to answer, but let's, just so you can have the time that you need to answer it, let's take a brief break and let's come back, and then I'm going to allow you to jump into that question, and feel free to answer it in the most free way that you can. It's important, I think, to enrich each other through these different perspectives. So let's take a break, and let's come back very shortly.